We start every knitting project by making a slip knot. If you pull on the yarn, you can see how you can control the size of the slip knot. So let's try it again. We're making a loop and then taking the long end of the yarn, you just put it through the loop. You want to make sure your slip knot is not too big, not too small. It just has to fit over the needle, but a little bit loosely. And you can always adjust the size. Once you have the slip knot, you're going to start casting on. You wrap the yarn around your hand and you put it back on the needle. There are different methods of casting on, and this is the easiest one. This is how we're getting our first round of stitches onto the needle. Make sure you don't pull too tight. If that happens, just loosen up the yarn. You can also wrap the yarn around your finger instead of your hand, whichever way feels more comfortable for you. You can even flip it and then put it back, just as long as all the stitches look the same and everything goes in the same direction. And then just keep moving the stitches along. Don't put all of them on the cable. Always have about 3 or 4 stitches on the needle, and the rest of them, it's okay to just let them slide onto the cable. This is why you even have the cable there, just to hold all the stitches. When you're done casting on 26 stitches, you want to make sure and count all the loops on the needle to make sure that you do in fact have 26. Then you can just spread the stitches around just to make sure that you have a few on both needles, and make sure everything is facing in the same direction. Make sure you do not twist. If you have a twist, you're going to have to take everything out. So everything looks nice, all the stitches are facing in the same direction. And now we start knitting. Go this way, not that way. This way, insert the needle. Make sure the needles are perpendicular to each other. Wrap the yarn around the needle. Pull it through the loop and take it off the needle. Again, insert the needle this way. Keep the needles perpendicular at 90-degree angle. Wrap the yarn around the needle. Pull it through the loop and take it off. And just keep moving your stitches around. In, yarn over, pull it through the loop and take it off. And again, in, yarn over, pull it through the loop, all the way in and take it off. Insert the needle, yarn over, pull it through the loop and take it off. You can think of it as a 4-step process. So your step 1 would be inserting the needle. So 1, step 2, yarn over, step 3, pull the yarn through, and step 4, take it off. Make sure you don't go through the back of the stitch or this way. Always go through the front in this direction. In, yarn over, pull it through the loop, all the way in and take it off. One. Make sure you don't keep the needles parallel or at any other weird angles. Always at a 90-degree angle. In, out, pull it through, take it off. One, two, three, and four. It helps to repeat the steps in your head, especially if you're just a beginner. In, yarn over, pull it through the loop, and take it off. The mistakes start happening if you skip a step. As you're getting to the end of your first round, you can tell by the tail end that this is where your next round is going to start. So right here, this is going to be the first stitch of your next round. The tail end is very helpful to have because it marks your rounds. And we keep doing the same stitch. In, yarn over, out, take it off. In, yarn over, pull it through, and take it off. And then we just keep knitting using the same knit stitch. Do not pull it too tight. This is a very bad habit to have. This stitch is called a knit stitch, and this is the most basic stitch that we use in knitting. When you've knitted the required number of rounds, you want to double check by counting them. So find your tail end. This is the beginning of the next round. And then we're just going to see, okay, so we're right at the end there. Now we're going to count. So that first horizontal line, that's just our cast on, so we don't count that, but we start counting these diagonal lines. You skip the first one, and then we start counting after the first one. Every line designates a round. The reason we skip the first one is because it's still part of your cast on. So we just keep counting all the way to the top. And don't forget to count the stitch that's on the needle. That's going to be your last one. So at this point, we're done knitting. We're going to cut the yarn. You can leave about 10 inches or so. We're going to take the tail end and thread it through the stitches. If you just pull the needle out, the whole thing will unravel. So what we have to do is put the tail end through every stitch one by one and take it off the needle individually. So this way, every stitch stays securely on that piece of yarn. And then you just keep going all the way around for every stitch. When you're at the end, remove the needle. You no longer need it. This will be the top of your head. So all we do here is pull the yarn as tightly as you can. Pull it through one of the stitches and just to secure it basically. And you can make an extra knot for just to make it a little bit more secure. Then we will put that tail end onto the inside of the head. So this way you don't see it on the outside. You don't really need the tail end that long. Just a couple inches is sufficient. So you can trim any extras. And then what we do, we just take that little tail and then we hide it in between the stitches. This is called weaving it in. So we're just weaving it in and make sure everything looks nice and clean. This way you don't see that little tail end. So we're done with the top of the head, but we still have one tail left. We're going to trim it because we just don't really need the tail to be that long. And then same thing. We're tucking it in between the stitches through the inside of the head until you no longer see it. Like so. And this is it. The head is done. You can optionally add a pom-pom with the remaining yarn. Take a piece of cardboard 3 by 5 inches. Use the shorter side for smaller pom-pom and the longer side for bigger pom-pom. And start wrapping the yarn around. You will also need a set of scissors. Larger blade works better. It will go a little bit faster. When you're done, cut the yarn, leaving about 15 inches or so. That 15-inch strand and tie it around the middle, and you want to make it as tight as possible and do a double knot. If you want, you can also tie it on the other side as well. But just be careful not to rip the yarn. You want to pull it tight, but just make sure the yarn doesn't rip. What we're going to do now is cut the loops. Be careful not to cut yourself and cut every single loop in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to trim the pom-pom. So when you're done cutting all the loops, you want to hold using the two longer strands, and make sure you don't cut those longer strands by accident because this is what you're going to use to secure the pom-pom to the head. Again, be careful here. Don't cut your hand by accident. And just trim. And just keep trimming, going all the way around. And eventually the pom-pom will have a nice round shape. And just cut any strands that are sticking out. So when you're done, now you can just tie the pom-pom to your head. So take one piece of yarn and put it right next to the center. Pull it through. Take the other one and put it opposite of the middle. And then just tie the two strands. You can make a knot, you can make a bow. If you want your pom-pom to be removable, you can just leave it with a bow. Maybe someday you want to wear your hat with a pom-pom and some days without, and you're done.